Hello, I'm Camilo Gomez, and this is my story. I was born in a small town, or used to be a small town back in the day, in the eastern part of Cuba. Following the changes in the political regime with the Castro rise to power, my family found themselves in the need to emigrate. And we emigrated in the mid-1960s. I lived as a small child with my parents, sometime in Mexico City, Bogotá, Colombia, and then we settled in Caracas, Venezuela, where I essentially grew up. And I lived there with my parents and the rest of my family until I went to medical school in the Dominican Republic. And after finishing medical school, I graduated and then came to the United States to pursue a specialized career, postgraduate education. And the rest has been history in the fact that I have worked for universities as a medical educator. I've been practicing medicine for 45 years now. I'm an interventional neurologist, and I have worked for several different medical schools in the United States and tried to educate a lot of people. My medical career changed over the course of time. I finished my residency in St. Louis University in St. Louis, Missouri. And upon finishing, I was recruited by the department to begin what was at the time their comprehensive stroke program. And I was lucky enough and flattered to be able to I was the founding director of what is now the Sauer Stroke Institute. In the mid-1990s, I was recruited at University of Alabama in Birmingham, and then I founded their comprehensive stroke program, which still is viable today. And as time has gone by, I've been in private practice. I then worked for Loyola University in Chicago, and currently I work for University of Missouri in Columbia. And then approximately 8 months ago, I decided to found the company that brought me CK Strategic Solutions Group, which is a company dedicated to consulting and publishing in the areas of quality improvement, risk management, medical legal expertise, as well as empathic reasoning, which is one of the areas of interest of ours. I think the most challenging thing in my formative years had to do with living in a world of individuals which were more older than I was. Back when I was in Venezuela, when I was in preschool, very early in my formative years, there was a teacher that decided, for one reason or another, that I didn't belong in her class and moved me essentially 2 stops above, advancing me in the class without checking with anybody. By the time this was found that I was essentially the youngest of the youngest in that class, there was a meeting. I remember being told there was a meeting with school officials, and I went to Catholic school all my life. The priests met with my parents, and they said, well, as long as he's getting good grades, we're not going to meddle, we're not going to tell the Ministry of Education or anything, so they don't give us any hassle. But what that did is, because for one reason or another, I did get good grades, and what that did is that it allowed me to move forward certainly at a speed, and with my contemporary classmates were always older than I was. I entered medical school when I was 16 and had a medical degree at the age of 20. And then when I went to medical school, in my class, my roommate was 35 years old when I was barely 19. The oldest person in my class was 45 years old at the time. So that was probably very challenging, because it's not something that I would recommend, because at the time you feel kind of invincible because you're young and you are accomplishing what nobody else is accomplishing, and you think that is phenomenal. But the emotional aspect of it is never quite what you want it to be. And looking back, I think that I was rushing through a world that in a way that prevented me from really savoring certain details of what was going on in my own life. I came to this country as an immigrant at the time. I applied for residency. I had to go through interviews, through the entire process. And what I always asked and was lucky enough to get was the opportunity to prove myself. And I did fairly well as a resident, and this is the reason why they offered me the job that they did when I was finishing with that. My career moved very quickly. I have been a very overachiever, very much of an overachiever over the course of time. And I pride myself on being intensely curious, and that curiosity within the academic medical community produced the fruits of a very successful academic career in terms of innovation, new ideas, publications. I have written books and scientific papers, and I've done research, and I've come up with ideas that others have not come up with, and that has been very fulfilling to me. Perhaps the most critical tipping point in my career is I was invited to lecture in an international symposium in Buenos Aires. And I landed and I gave my talk, and at the time I was stroke center director. I was on the forefront of stroke management and so on. And the person that followed me was a speaker, was someone older than me, more experienced than me, who eventually became my friend and colleague, gave a talk on the interventional management of stroke. Interventional management of stroke really means how can we manage stroke patients by inserting these little devices and catheters and tubes from inside, unclogging blood vessels that are closed by a blood clot, or treating aneurysms that have rupture or risk for rupturing. And it was like it opened my eyes to a world that I had not seen despite my education to that point and the fact that I was already a faculty member. And it's almost like a beam of light comes from heaven, and you say, I gotta take that path. And that is what sent me in this search and in my journey to become an interventional neurologist. So I've been practicing medicine for 45 years, and I've been an interventional neurologist for approximately 35 or so. So the first decade, I was not really privy to all of this information. Failure is inevitable. If I've learned nothing, is that the reason we fall down is so we learn to pick up ourselves. In the chapter that I wrote in the book with Chris Voss, which is very personal, there are two particular points in my life that I considered difficult in failure of sorts. One of them was personal, one of them was professional. The personal one has to do with failure to recognize a flaw in someone that I cared for, that was a member of my family, and that ended up costing a lot of grief in our family because it led to the disintegration of one of the companies that I own, a medical practice that I own, and due to legal troubles that probably were not necessary. And I see that as my own failure, not the failure of others. And as far as a professional, I think that looking back, I wish I had known enough about negotiation to have avoided some of the difficulties that I've had in having to resign my position in various circumstances because of major disagreements with universities and so on. If I could go back, I would tell my younger self, slow down, look around you, enjoy the moment, smell the roses through your path, learn about negotiation, learn about empathy. Not everything is critical thinking by itself. Look at the human aspect of things and consider the fact that it is much easier to catch flies with honey. What drives me today is curiosity. I am intensely curious. I see mysteries in everything. The mystery of life itself, as a physician, as a human being, is really overwhelming to me. I think that are unexplainable. And therefore, that drives me to find answers. To me, knowledge is power. And the knowledge, the mechanistic knowledge of how things work and why they work and how they work is what allows us to detect the good, the bad, the things that need fixing, the things that we can continue to do, the things we can improve upon, the things that we can use to help others achieve their own personal successes. That's what drives me. I am Camilo Gomez, and this is my story.